The Lord be with you.
And also
with you.
Good morning. Let us pray, please. Gracious God, by the hand of Moses, your servant, you led your people out of slavery and made them free at last. Grant that your church, following the example of your prophet Martin Luther King Jr., we may become your disruptive, beloved community and strive to secure for all your children the freedom of the gospel of Jesus Christ, who lives with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Amen.
Downstairs is great.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Wanda, welcome.
This morning you get to hear from me because the person that should have been here that we signed up a long time ago couldn't be here. So
We lucked out.
you get
about
me.
you.
You get me. So I have so. This is a story of witness and testimony about the very long road that I have traveled in the church. Thank you for being here. "50 years ago, October 1975, I was installed as the pastor of a three-church parish in West Central Maine. It's Farmington, where I lived, and where I was installed was in the village of North New Portland, which was right about there, okay? The installation was held at the North New Portland Community Church, a graceful white clapboard, tall steepled, needing a coat of paint church in a village of a few hundred souls. At the installation service, my boss, the Reverend Carl Juries, charged me. He said to me, "Scott, you have everything in the world right here. Be a good parish minister and follow your heart's delight." Following the worship service, we walked next door to the Grange Hall, a simple white frame building where the women of the community hosted a supper of baked beans, brown bread, American chop suey, biscuits, and pie. North New Portland had once been a prosperous village. You knew that by the architectural detail of the steeple. A century earlier, there had been lumber and wood turning mills in the Carrabassett River, dairy farm, high school, hotel, town band. The church elder, one of the church elders, an octogenarian, Letty Hutchins, who wore long floral dresses and high-top laced-up black leather shoes. She had been married to the town doctor. Letty told me Dr. Hutchins, she always referred to him as Dr. Hutchins, didn't much like getting out at night to deliver babies.
Right.
To the north, here was the Great Northern Forest. Though second and third growth forest, it reached unbroken about 100 miles to the Quebec border. These are storied woods, these northern woods. In 1975, Benedict Arnold, right up that way, right through this parish, led an army on an ill-fated trip to Quebec City. The congregation that joined in the installation service was made up of members of my new three-church parish, North New Portland, and from New Portland, about 10 miles south, and from Fairbanks Union Church in Farmington, about 30 miles down the road. New Portland was a mill town. Farmington was a shire town. Who knows what a shire town is? County seat. County seat of Franklin County, population 7,000. Farmington had a hospital, a college, a courthouse, a jail, and a Walmart. Half the congregation that day was composed of members of 9 other churches that made up a cooperative ministry, Mission at the Eastward, of which my new parish was a member. Mission at the Eastward was organized in 1960 by the United Presbyterian Board of National Missions. The founder was my immediate predecessor, the high-energy visionary pastor named William Berger Jr. He had come to Maine through the Board of Missions to serve this region's logging camps. He joined a cadre of logging camp chaplains called lumberjack sky pilots. Lumberjack sky pilots. I love that name. After World War II, with mechanization making the woods accessible to trucking, the logging camps closed. But Bill noticed in his wanderings around this region that all the small towns where these loggers lived, like New Portland and North New Portland, churches were all closed, no pastors. And so with the Board of National Missions, he organized a cooperative, a parish of small churches working together. Mission at the Eastward. The installation service was a family gathering, all the churches, all the ministers who served them, now me, the newest of the sky pilots. I was charged to be the parish minister for a parish stretching 500 square miles. A friend from the University of Maine described this region. He said, there's nothing like Western Maine in all of the United States. 575 mountains over 1,000 feet in elevation, 960 lakes, 8 million acres of forest land, hundreds of miles of outstanding rivers, Douglas for trout, a rich architectural and historical heritage stretching back to pre-colonial times, and the people whose character and commitment sustain them in good times and bad. Carl Jury is the minister who preached at the installation service, had organized a 3-church parish in 1963 and served as the cooperative parish director. He was a tough man, a World War II combat veteran, who challenged me always to have a wide vision for ministry. And when you serve 500 square miles, it wasn't hard not to have a wide vision. And Carl, he always had my back. To be paid, he had to fill out a legal size monthly log sheet in triplicate. Copies sent to the session, the mission council, and the Board of National Missions. The expectation was to make 100 pastoral calls a month. This was an outdoor ministry, a ministry open to the sky, as Wendellberry says. I served a parish, a geographical region, always really important to me, which meant caring for every soul in the bounds. The ministry took place in small churches on Sunday mornings, in the woods with loggers, in countless kitchens, visiting the dying at their bedsides. It was a privilege to be connected to a community of people to share very intimately in these lives from birth to death, where nothing was spared. At the installation service, Carl gave me good advice. He said, be a good pastor and follow your heart's delights. And that meant exactly that. Be a good pastor. Mind the tales of the parish. Preach well, visit the sick, bury the dead, teach the gospel, balance the budget, and then find something to do you love, your heart's delight. That meant something in your ministry you love, and then pursue it. And for me, totally unbeknownst to me, that turned out to be community organizing. It took me in directions I would have never dreamed. Healthcare, housing, job creation. Some things worked well, other things utterly failed. But Carl always supported me. He used to say, God didn't put us on earth to die. Do something. He also said, never work alone. So from the day of that installation service, I had 2 jobs. I was a parish minister with that big parish, and I was also a staff member of a 12-church cooperative. We, the ministers, met bi-weekly. I was compulsory. A lot of things were compulsory with Carl. Beyond looking after your parish, you were expected to support the wider programs of the mission. So you worked at a summer camp, like it or not. We watched each other closely. We studied, prayed, strategized, and then we went skiing. We took cooperative ministry seriously. You know, these small churches in this area, they're all right in this area, West Central Maine. You know, I'm talking churches with 10 people. Didn't have enough for a youth ministry with 1 or 2 kids. But with 12 churches working together, you could have a great youth ministry. And we did. The church didn't have a stewardship program. An elder from another church would travel 50 miles to help us organize one in one of the other churches. We did good things. We operated a wilderness summer camp. We had this great youth music program called Sparrow Song. We built and rehabbed dozens of houses. We owned and managed a 50-unit affordable trailer park. I still carry scars from that effort. And we organized a partnership with a rural South African parish that took me to South Africa over a dozen times. An important lesson Carl taught me to be a good Presbyterian. This is a part of the world dominated by Baptist and congregational churches. Nobody had ever heard of anything called Presbyterian. Carl taught me the importance of church organization. We did things decently and in order, lots of teaching of the Book of Order, which meant raising church leaders who went on to be leaders in other parts of the community, serving as selectmen on school boards, people who knew things, how to get things done. It's so interesting. Teaching people to be elders, teaching the Book of Orders, teaching that structure translated to people to be on selectmen, become selectmen, and on school boards. Absolutely direct. And being a good Presbyterian meant being active in Presbytery Synod and General Assembly. We were part of the Presbytery of Northern New England. That was Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and a quarter of Massachusetts. It's a big presbytery. And because we were a mission of the larger church, we received a lot of grant funding. We totally participated in the process. Presbyterian meetings were always 3 or 4 hour driveways. So when you complain about going across the Potomac, you know. But it meant being connected, being a familiar face and supportive across the wider church. We received a lot of money and we gave a lot back. This past week, I was at Princeton Theological Seminary for this really good continuing education course. The director of the program, Nate Phillips, is from West Mills, Maine, a town of 150. I have known Nate since he was 3 or 4 months in utero. And that was the director of the program. The executive director of Princeton Theological Steward, Ann Stewart, was a seminary student of mine. 20 years ago, she went on to become, she's got a PhD in Old Testament, taught at Emory, and is now the second command at Princeton Theological Seminary. And she said it was that summer that set me on the road to becoming a minister and in the church. That was our giving back. That was our giving back. The road to that North Newport installation service started in Hadley, Massachusetts, when I was in college. And that long road started with the book Let Us Now Praise Famous Men by James A.G. and Walker Evans. How many of you know Let Us Now Praise Famous Men? Great book, great book. The book was published in 1941, and it documents the lives of 3 tenant farmers in Depression-era Alabama. A.G. and Evans lived with the families, writing, photographing an intimate record of their lives. A.G. writes, in every child who is born under no matter what circumstances and of no matter what parents, potentiality of the human race is born again. And in him too, once more, and in each of us, our terrific responsibility towards human life, towards the utmost idea of goodness. The book had a huge impact on me, and I wanted to do what A.G. and Evans had done. And so for a little over a year and a half, I wrote about and took pictures of a farm in Hadley, Massachusetts, the Parsons family farm. And the questions that were that work raised are still the ones that I am thinking about 50 years later. I haven't really ever gotten very far from Hadley, Massachusetts. In divinity school, one summer I needed a job, and posted on the bulletin board in school was an ad for an internship in Maine for something called Mission at the Eastward, a three-church parish. I answered the ad, drove up March 1974, met with the three-church session at Fairbanks Union Church. I remember those good, sober people sitting on these stiff wooden pews called settees who had no idea what to ask me. And they invited me to be their pastor for the summer. And I did, and before returning to school for my final year, Carl Joris sat me down in his office and said, "I think you'll be back in a year." And he was right. What I learned about in Maine was community. I love Wendell Berry's definition in interdependence of local people, local culture, local economy, local nature. A community, he writes, identifies itself by an understood mutuality of interests, but it lives and acts by the common virtues of trust, goodwill, forbearance, self-restraint, compassion, and forgiveness. If it hopes to continue long as a community, it will wish to and will have to encourage respect for all its members, human and natural. It will encourage respect for all stations and occupations. Most importantly, Wendell Berry writes, it must be generally loved and competently cared for by its people who individually identify their own interests with the interests of their neighbors. The word cherish comes to mind. The French philosopher Simone Weil wrote, "To be rooted is perhaps the most important and least recognized need of the human soul." What I didn't know when I was installed those years ago was how these themes of community, home, and place would take a very deep root in me. So let's get out into the woods for a few minutes. I want to tell you the story of 83-year-old Colby Atwood. Like a lot of men his age who lived in small Maine towns his entire life, except for the years in the Philippines during World War II, Colby lived in one place, Atwood Hill in Portland, Maine. A few weeks before Colby died, I had gone up to Atwood Hill to visit with him and his wife, Helen. I had not visited for several months, and I was feeling a little neglectful, actually more than a little neglectful. When I entered the home, Helen greeted me. She led me to Colby's room where she spoke my name. "Colby, Scott is here to see you." Colby pulled himself up in bed, was receiving me. Colby was a tough man who worked his entire life on this farm, pruning apple orchards, cutting hay, tending sheep and cattle. "How are you making it?" he inquired of me. "They using you okay?" Even though I had not visited for several months, I was still part of the circle of this family. Very powerful to be called by name, to be known. A few days later, Colby's wife, Helen, called me before 6 a.m. to tell me that her husband had died at home in bed. She didn't want me to do anything, just wanted me to know Colby had died. The next day, I met with the family in the farmhouse kitchen, and my purpose was to plan the next day's funeral service. This is the scene. Colby's 3 grown sons stand uneasily leaning against the kitchen sideboard. Their wives and children sit at table with Helen. I asked the sons, "Tell me about your father." And one of them, Richard, says under his breath, "Most of what you could say about Dad couldn't use in a sermon." I've heard that about 1,000 times. There's uneasy laughter and agreement and then silence. And to break the silence, I asked this family, "Show me your farm." Greatly relieved, everyone bundles up and we head outside. We walk across a road, fence gate is opened and shut, out onto a pasture. On this cold April day, the gray, cloudy skies hang low around us. The talk starts slowly. One son points out a falling down sawmill and tells us cedar shingles were milled there. We walk along the trace of an overgrown road. Another son points into the woods at dark shadows, remnants, stone foundations, a neighbor's farm. We walk the abandoned road. I can see one cellar hole after another, all the farms gone. We walk across another field over a stone wall to the remains of an ancient apple orchard. The third son remembers working summer after summer in that apple orchard. A grandson tells us Colby talked with him about a day in the Philippines in World War II. Colby was unloading crates of apples at a dock, and the wooden apple crates carried the name Atwood Farms. The apples Colby was unloading were grown on this farm. No one in the family had ever heard that story before. We reached the top of Atwood Hill, and from the summit we can see the snow-capped mountains stretching to the horizon. Mount Abrams, Sugarloaf, the Bigelows, Bear, and Chairback. And from this vantage point, a granddaughter points to the village below us, New Portland, where one of the towns I served, there's a church, a mill, one store. In Colby's time, this village enjoyed a sustainable and diverse economy. There was work for everyone. Small farms produced food. Woodlots and small sawmills generated enough cash to purchase what you could not get locally. Neighbors helped out when they were needed. This farm, we were walking, these mountains, the village below where Colby had lived. Colby could be brusque. I knew that. I really knew that. He could be demanding. But like the sharp wind blowing across the hill, I'd also known him to be tender, feeding chickadee sunflowers from his hands. But I knew him better for seeing this place, for walking its acres with his family. Back at the farmhouse, warming around a wood stove, drinking coffee, the talk flowed easily. I have walked so many hilltops with these families. These walks shape my life. I've grown familiar with the connections between people and place, strong, proud people who have lived in a hard place. I am drawn to this deep sense of rootedness, this connection to a place. Walking with Colby's Atwood's family on that afternoon, we looked out from the height of land at the sweep of the mountains, but down on the ground, these people also knew the harsh realities of life. I have visited the small family cemeteries and seen the marble angel markers where a child or a whole family of children is buried. They know how fragile life is. The hard scrabble of this place teaches about limits. Psalm 90 was always in my head. Teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom, and let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish thou the work of our hands upon us. The day after I walked Colby Atwood's farm, the whole town turned out for his funeral. People came to mourn their neighbor, but they also came to mourn the loss of a way of life. This sense of a place of people who work with their hands and their minds and their hearts unto wisdom, this sense of strong local, independent, and interdependent communities, this whole is in large part only a memory, and I think we are diminished for it. We live in what James Howard Kunstler calls a geography of nowhere. This geography creates the illusion that it doesn't matter where we live or work, because one place is pretty much like another, and it fosters neglect, ignorance, and destruction. I chose to stay put, to learn how to dwell in a place, because I believe I cannot have a spiritual center without having a geographical one. I cannot live a grounded life without being grounded in a place. Wendell Berry writes out of the Southern agrarian tradition, and his vision of community is articulated in a rural context centered around small towns. Berry's work is useful in developing a sense of the various ingredients necessary for a viable community. It's necessary to ask if and how this vision of community, if indeed it is compelling, can be translated into an urban and suburban context. In 2010, after 35 years in Western Maine, I received a call to lead the Maine Seacoast Mission. And Marcia and I moved 3 hours east to Mount Desert Island. That's Mount Desert Island. And the region served by the Seacoast Mission goes from Cowes and Eastward, Machias, all the way down. Actually, we get down to Camden, and all these islands all through there. Like the work, and the mission was founded in 1905. Like the work of Mission at Eastward, Western Maine, at the Seacoast Mission, I was encouraged to wander around, now by sea as well as land, and to keep my eye out for whatever needed to be done, and to find ways to do it. We served all of these outer islands, and we did that with a great iconic boat, the Sunbeam actually number 5, 76-foot triple-hulled steel deck boat. And today, I bet it's most important in the winter. Today, it's out on an island, harbored somewhere, inviting islanders to come on board for worship in the pilot house, prayers in the pilot house, to join us for lunch. We have a nurse practitioner on board, so you can check in on health issues, and then to play dominoes for the entire afternoon. Interestingly, for a century, the Seacoast Mission had employed a cadre of itinerant pastors charged to wander around and see what good they can do. We have it in the archive. I had access to their logbooks, and whenever I got discouraged, I pulled out these detailed records. 1930, Alice Ma Peasley gets dropped off by the Sunbeam on Green Island off Jonesport. This is pretty rural. Not much out on Green Island. She gets picked up 6 months later. And you know what she's done in those 6 months? She organized an elementary school. And then she gets dropped off on Matinicus. Matinicus is 30 miles. It's a rock, 30 miles out in the Atlantic. You know what she does? She organized a women's hooked rug cooperative to help women who needed some extra cash. And what was so fascinating, reading these logs, they are also called sky pilots. Isn't that neat? I love that. Just like the lumberjack ministers. Let me just read a quick statement from the 1905 Seacoast Mission Bulletin, the annual report. To sail a sloop in a parish extending from Kittery Point. Kittery Point is off the map. Kittery Point's down here. To Quoddy Head. Quoddy Head's up here. The coast of Maine. To sail a sloop from Quoddy Point, from Kittery Point to Quoddy Head, along the broken coast of Maine in all kinds of weather. This is a 26-foot sloop. Okay, 26 feet is not a small undertaking. That's the understatement. To enter the coves and harbors, to call on the families on isolated islands, to visit the lightkeepers and the life-giving stations is a task of greater magnitude. That's a great line. What truly impressed me is this task of greater magnitude to enter the lives of these families. I've been always drawn to that task. Last fall, I got back to Hadley, Massachusetts. Hadn't been there for a long time where this all started. I wanted to introduce my grandchildren to the Parson family and their farm. I had probably been there in 25 or 30 years. Not much had changed in over 50 years. Earl Parsons, my wonderful dear friend of all those years, he had died, but his 90-year-old wife, Shirley, was still kicking. So funny. She starts telling my 46-year-old daughter about my girlfriends that I brought. Hadn't changed. But then she places a newborn lamb in my granddaughter's arms. From Hadley that day, we drove northeast to Western Maine wanted to show the children where their grandparents had lived all those years. The small towns I knew so well are a little more slumped. Several of the churches I served are closed. We continued east, driving the coast road, Route 1 to easternmost Washington County. This is Washington County up here. Slowing down through the towns Harrington, Cherryfield, Millbridge, Jonesport. Lobstering is good, but warming waters could change all that. And as I pass through all these good places, I think of the great people I have been so privileged to know who devoted their lives to the well-being of these communities. I think of Robin Alden, a fisherman biologist working to restore Atlantic salmon runs up the Downeast rivers. She has a vision of fishing forever. It's incredible. Or Marion Kane, the Maine Community Foundation leader who taught me the profound lesson to look at people in their strength, not their weaknesses, and to build upon those strengths. Or Charlie Reed, the simple lay Methodist pastor who founded the economic ministry in the most remote place, Salem Village on the side of Mount Abrams. And he taught high school kids how to make furniture. He taught me how to read the Bible from the underside, from the perspective of the poor and the powerless. And Vivian Kennedy, she pronounced her name Vivian Kennedy. She was a proud Presbyterian elder of the West Mills, Maine Community Church, with 15 worshipers on a good Sunday, who organized countless baked bean and brown bread suppers and encouraged me to preach the gospel and to do my job, even if only 1 or 2 people showed up for worship on a snowy morning. And that happens so often. She said I didn't have to preach the whole sermon. I could cut out a point or two. Women and men of vision who set before themselves tirelessly the tasks of greater magnitude. As a parish minister in Western Maine, we got done pretty quickly here. I witnessed the slow downturn of rural communities. People wondered where to look for hope. I did this for a long time. And what sustained me was the strength of these people, my colleagues in ministry, and my friends across the Presbyterian Church who prayed for me and Marcia. As I said, I never felt alone in this. This sense of being a connection with church is actually fairly important to folks who are working in these places. And faith sustained me. I loved the Hebrew prophets. They gave me a way of thinking about what I saw around me. They imagined the healing of city, land, and people as a whole, a vision of life on the far side of disaster. Isaiah says, yes, here I am creating new heavens and a new earth. Here I am creating Jerusalem as a joy, and her people gladness and delight, nor more shall the sound of weeping be heard in it, or the cry of distress. Those words, when you're leading a funeral in New Portland, Maine, for a young mother who has died of a drug overdose. Pretty powerful. Isaiah is addressing despairing, brokenhearted people, speaking peace to them. These are the people I served, and my calling was to stand with them and give them hope. And we did tangible things. We built houses. We cultivated gardens. And I learned from the gospel. Some of my favorite words are from Albert Schweitzer's, and you've heard this, Larry has said these words. He, the Lord, the risen Lord, comes to us as one unknown, without a name, as of old by the lakeside. Came to those men who knew him not. He speaks to us the same word, follow thou me, and sets us to the tasks which he has to fulfill for our time. He commands, and to those who obey him, whether they be wise or simple, he will reveal himself in the toils, the conflicts, the sufferings, which they shall pass through in his fellowship. And as an ineffable mystery, we shall learn in our own experience who he is. Follow thou me, Jesus commands. The theologian Hans Frey said it would be frightening to preach on that text. And that's absolutely true. For me, following Jesus has meant taking first steps, not knowing where they're going to lead or what you're going to get yourselves into. And that means obeying. Commanding, obeying, those are hard words. Schweitzer says, the Lord will reveal himself in the toils, the conflicts, the sufferings, which we shall pass through in the Lord's fellowship. When I was installed at North New Portland, that was the road I was commanded to set my foot on. The road of toils, conflicts, and sufferings, but never alone, always in the Lord's fellowship. And in that following, learning who the Lord is. That is true. So the road from that installation service wound through the foothills and mountains of Western Maine, and then along Route 1, the coastal road towards Jonesport, and now comes to pause in Alexandria, Virginia. I started out as a young man, and now I've got some age on me. I didn't expect the road to bring me to this good place 3 years ago. But this church has sheltered and cared for me and my family through hard times. You gave me a good job that gets me up early in the morning. You've been my friend. You prayed with me, and you've given me a lot to think about. I am grateful more than you can know. But I wonder where the road goes from here. For many years, I was occupied with the renewal of rural communities. I think about the renewal of suburban and urban communities as well. I learned ancient Israel did not make the cleavage between rural and urban like we tend to do. Blessed are you in the city, blessed are you in the field. So I wonder, what does it mean to turn our attention as a church to the revitalization of our city? If we hope to create a context with which our lives can be lived with dignity and joy, then we must turn our attention to preserving local culture, local customs, local beauty, local economies, families, and memories. What does it mean to commit to a particular place, particular neighbors, in the long work of making a place, of recognizing and enjoying the responsibilities and pleasures of membership in a local community? These words from Wendell Berry have sustained me. I close with these. He writes, in this difficult time of failed public expectation, when thoughtful people wonder where to look for hope, I keep returning in my own mind to the thought of the renewal of rural communities. For the renewal of rural communities ultimately implies the renewal of urban ones. but to be authentic, a true encouragement and a true beginning, this would have to be a renewal accomplished mainly by the community itself. It would have to be done not from the outside by the instruction of visiting experts, but from the inside by the ancient rule of neighborliness, by the love of precious things, and by the wish to be at home. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Were you searching for a job and just,
Totally.
yeah, and just came upon this as a possibility?
Yep.
And applied?
Yep.
And we got lucky and got
I mean, here, Westminster?
Yeah.
No, very particular. Thank you. That's a nice question. A friend of my daughter's, member here died 3 years ago. And my daughter went to the funeral and was very moved by the care. And I was about to move up here and she said, Dad, you got to go check this place out. So I came here and had coffee with Larry, and you've heard this story, I've told it before. Larry goes to Swans Island. Swans Island was part of my charge. Been there 100 times. And so I know a lot of people out on Swans Island. I wanted to know if Larry knew those people. They were the good people, the Swan Islanders, to know. And he did. He liked them. Some of these are. The first selectman of Swans Island, a guy named Reginald, he would come, he would make an appointment. He'd call and say, Scott, can I make an appointment to come to your office to talk to you? And I said, sure. When do you want to come? He said, 15 minutes. I'm in town. So he'd come and he'd sit down and he would just talk. And I would think, Reginald, where is this going? Because it was going somewhere. And it took an hour of him just kind of talking about what was going on before he'd get around. It was usually something he was angry about with me, that we had not done something. And anyhow, but Larry knows this guy. And so I figured Larry must be okay. That's my criteria. And so I came here and you know, one of the things when you have a retired minister show up in your parish, be a real pain. You just sort of, you sit there and you know, you critique everything. And so Larry's strategy, so gave me a job. So I'm very grateful. It's been great. So,
Yeah, we are too.
Thank you. Yeah.
Scott,
Yeah. Yes.
I'm curious about your home life when you were on the Maine Seacoast Mission. Would you be gone days at a time? Did your wife go with you? I'm just curious how that worked on a day.
She went sometimes. We'd be out for a week. Crew of 5 on the boat, captain, engineer, nurse practitioner, steward, chaplain, me when I would go. The boat had very nice little rooms with bunk beds. So my wife would have to sleep in the upper bunk. And there was a porthole right in the middle of where and the top of the thing swung up. So you had to kind of curve your body around.
So she didn't always go.
You know, so the boat also was going like this, and you have to fit yourself. She loved the boat. The boat was always great fun,
Yeah.
but not always comfortable. But you're nice to ask. No, the boat was great. It's great.
And so did you always have like, did you know who you needed to go see, or you just routinely stopped at these towns and catch things?
We had a routine.
Okay.
Pretty much. There were some tough times. The Sunbeam had been going to these places for over a century, so you knew everybody. And in the wintertime, you know, these islands have 30 or 40 people on them in the winter. Very small, no stores, no nothing. So we were the coffee shop, we were the entertainment. We brought lots of resources, people out, did a lot of things. There were some, you know, things went on too. a lot of these islands were served by a private air service up to Cessnas. And when we had left Matinicus, which is way out, 30 miles out, and we were heading back. It was at night, and we got over the radio came that a Cessna had crashed. It was pushed down, and the pilot had been killed. And we turned around, went back, and the minister, Rob Benson, who is actually his family is here, is from Alexandria, spent the night with the body in the chapel, small chapel, and everybody, I was on the boat, everybody from the island came on the boat all night. It was like a vigil. Nobody said anything.
Wow.
We just sat until the patrol came to take the body. And there were numerous. These are cantankerous places. Fishing is a complicated business, and people sometimes got mad at each other and shot at each other. And one time we were involved in a case where somebody had shot and hurt somebody. So the boat, we were there, the boat went out. The nurse stayed with one family. The chaplain stayed with the other family until the police could come. I often didn't tell my wife a lot of things that were going on, but thank you. Well, lots of good memories. Good. Yeah.
I wonder, you mentioned at one point the Baptists, and I sort of wondered who, like, whether you had fellow travelers from, priests or ministers in other churches that are in these rural communities, or whether you were like really the only game in town for big areas, and what that felt like.
Yeah, lots of lay pastors, people who worked in mills who did other things. Again, these were poor places. And in a lot of these churches, it's so hard to get ministers, like Presbyterian ministers, to come to serve. We had salaries and pensions and all that stuff because of Board of National Missions. Really hard to get people to come. And a friend of mine said, it's not because of a lack of mission or ministry to do, it's a lack of ministers. And that was always, there was always, lots to do, but it was just hard to get people to serve. The cooperative was interesting because as a parish minister, churches focus inwards on their own life and are very compelled by their own lives. A cooperative faces outwards, and there was always a tension. People were always mad at me. But why are you doing that over there? You should be here with us. And I would say, I don't care. I'm going to do what I want to. But there was this real tension, but Carl always said, be a good pastor. So you can't imagine the number of funerals I had. I mean, you serve 500 square miles, all the time. And but I was always trying to be a good minister and take care of the folks as best I could. I forget a lot of times. I still dream about that. People I've forgotten. Oh my God, I never called them back. This is 30 years later, but they're still angry. And then the outward side to do things for the entire community. It was always a tension. And the mission failed probably because of that tension. It was ministers were not interested. When I taught in the seminary for a long time, and all these ministers, we all had to do 3 jobs to sustain our livelihoods, And so I would tell young ministers at seminary, 100 calls a month. They would look at me like, you are crazy. You are crazy. I have a sermon to preach. That's going to take 25 hours. I said, no, preaching and worship was so good because I had all these stories. I knew so much about what was going on, and connecting the gospel to those stories. Exegesis was not the Greek language was not that important. It was connecting people's lives with these. It was no problem at all. It was Jesus spoke to all these people, and that was fun. I love that. So.
I came a little late, so maybe I just missed it, but I'm confused on your timeline. When did you go to seminary and then you taught at seminary? Was that before or after you were in
Oh,
Maine?
during, I went to seminary from 1972 to 1975, moved to Maine, and probably started teaching at Bangor Theological Seminary, which went defunct. It's a sad story. I started doing that probably about 1985 or so. And
Did you physically left Maine and
No.
went to Andover or no?
no, Bangor Theological
Bangor, I
Seminary,
thought you
Bangor,
said
Maine,
Andover, I'm sorry. Bangor.
right there.
Yeah, uh-huh.
And it also, friends, it's Bangor. It's not Bangor. If you say bang, when you go to Bangor,
It's
don't
Bangor.
say bang, don't say Bangor, say Bangor. Okay, I had a very
Why
large
do you
funeral.
say Mount Desert? I always thought it was Mount Desert.
Either
but I was
way,
told.
either way, either way. I had a funeral of somebody from Bangor, Maine, a long time ago, and I got up to say, you know, Miss Sally from Bangor, Maine. 200 people responded to me, Bangor. So, yeah,
Sounds like these places, both mountain and the coast, are depopulated. Is your mission, do you have a successor behind you in both places?
the Seacoast Mission, it's different, has an endowment, and it's doing okay. It's doing
There's still people on the island?
small groups, and it's, you know, it's frankly, it gets harder to justify. A 76-foot big boat is a very expensive undertaking, if you know about boats, really expensive. But keep finding new stuff to do. But the people who are coming in are people from away, looking for seasonal homes and stuff. And a lot of the real issue along the coast in like Mount Desert Island is these are all mostly fishing communities. The local populations can't afford to live there anymore. So you sell your house, make a lot of money, and then you move towards Bangor.
Did you get financial help from the wealthy and the communities in
You
Bar
bet,
Harbor?
you bet.
Silver
Yeah,
Bear?
guilted them.
Uh-huh.
Took them out on the Sunbeam. Oh, they love going out on the Sunbeam.
Uh-huh.
They love going out on the Sunbeam. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. They're great people, very supportive. Very supportive. So, thank you,
But
guys.
it must have been like coming into a different world though, to move down here and this vibe must have been somewhat disorienting.
Still is.
Has your daughter been here a long time, so you've visited for many years?
Yes, she's been here. Yeah. Margaret, you want to give us a preview? What happens next today?
Well, we have regular church, afternoon church.
Afternoon,
on
right.
Floyd Jones.
Right.
And then after that, there is a congregational meeting to vote on whether we will approve going forward with a construction loan.
Thank you. Be there, right?
Yeah.
Good. And vote,
Yeah,
okay.
go West Virginia.
Go in peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.